They told you fairness wins, kindness prevails, truth rises to the top. But Machiavelli knew better, and they banned his book for 5 centuries because it told the real story. Power doesn't care about your morals. 7 texts were pulled from shelves, burned, banned, hidden. Not because they were wrong, because they were true. And the truth they carried about power, control, identity, and the machinery that keeps you small was too dangerous for you to know. This isn't theory. This isn't motivation. This is the architecture of reality, stripped bare. And by the end of this video, you'll see the invisible hand that's been shaping your choices, your beliefs, your entire life, and you'll never unsee it. Stay until the end, because the 7th concept is the one they fear most. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in 1513. It was condemned immediately, placed on the papal index, because it didn't teach kings to be good. It taught them to win, and winning required darkness the church couldn't stomach. Deception, manipulation, strategic cruelty. But here's what matters. The book wasn't banned because it was immoral. It was banned because it worked. It gave the powerless a map to power, and that map threatened the people already at the top. Now, centuries later, 7 other texts face the same fate, pulled from schools, libraries, lists of acceptable reading, not for obscenity, but for exposure. They expose how power really operates, how identity is controlled, how systems keep you locked in place while pretending you're free. These aren't just books, they're weapons. And this video will show you how to wield them. Power doesn't care about goodness. That's the first truth, the one that breaks people. Because from childhood, you were told the opposite. Be kind, work hard, follow the rules, and you'll be rewarded. Machiavelli laughed at that. He watched princes fall because they believed in fairness, because they trusted in loyalty, because they thought virtue was armor. And then he watched ruthless men take their thrones. In The Prince, he writes, "A prince who wishes to maintain his position must learn to be not good, not evil, not sadistic, just willing to act outside morality when survival demands it." This is the heart of moral power dynamics. Power is neutral, and it flows to whoever understands the game, not whoever plays by imaginary rules. Let's go deeper. Why does this idea terrify institutions? Because the moment you accept that morality and power are separate, you stop being controllable. You stop believing the lie that good people naturally rise. You start seeing the truth. The people at the top aren't there because they're better. They're there because they were more strategic, more willing to deceive, more capable of appearing virtuous while acting ruthlessly. Machiavelli didn't invent this. He simply named it. He pulled back the curtain, and the powerful hated him for it, because once you see the machinery, you can't be told the throne is divine. You've been taught to trust authority, to assume your boss promotes based on merit, to believe the political candidate who speaks about values. But watch what Machiavelli teaches. People don't follow saints, they follow strength. The co-worker who takes credit for your work, they're not evil, they're strategic. They understand that perception drives promotion, and while you focus on doing good work, they focus on looking indispensable. Machiavelli would nod. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Because love is fickle, fear is reliable. Control is earned through calculated displays of power, not through kindness alone. This concept was embedded in The Prince, yes, but it's also the beating heart of every text that gets banned for corrupting youth. Because once you accept amoral power dynamics, you stop being passive. You stop waiting for fairness. You start taking what you need, and the system that relies on your obedience begins to crack. Here's the deeper cut. Most people reject this idea, not because it's wrong, but because accepting it means accepting that they've been played, that every authority figure who told them, just be good, was either naive or lying to keep them weak. That's a hard pill, but it's the first pill, and the rest won't make sense until you swallow it. Amoral power explains how control happens, but it doesn't explain where. It doesn't explain the battleground most people never see, the mind itself. Because the cruelest form of control isn't chains, it's making you chain yourself. And that brings us to the second forbidding concept. You become your own prison. That's the secret, the one they don't want you to understand. Because if you did, the entire system would collapse. Here's how it works. Oppression doesn't just come from outside. It doesn't just come from laws, enforcers, institutions. It gets inside you. It becomes the voice that says you're not smart enough, not white enough, not man enough, not worthy enough. It becomes the belief you carry without questioning. And once that belief is internalized, the oppressor doesn't need to do anything. You'll oppress yourself. Machiavelli understood this in reverse. He knew that to control a populace, you don't need constant force. You need them to believe in their powerlessness. You need them to see rebellion as impossible, resistance as futile, and their place in the hierarchy as natural. In The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison shows us with devastating clarity. A young black girl internalizes the hatred of her own blackness. She believes blue eyes equal beauty. She believes whiteness equals worth, not because she's weak, but because every message, every image, every structure around her tells her that her skin, her features, her existence is wrong, and so she destroys herself from the inside. This is the forbidden knowledge. The most effective chains are the ones you can't see, because this concept doesn't just explain racism, it explains everything: class, gender, sexuality, nationality. Every system of power relies on convincing the oppressed that their oppression is deserved, natural, or inevitable. The poor are told they're lazy. Women are told they're emotional. The colonized are told they're uncivilized. And over time, some begin to believe it. That belief is the foundation of control. Machiavelli would call it strategic brilliance. Make them enforce their own subjugation. Make them police themselves. And you'll never need an army. You carry shadows you didn't choose. Maybe you were told you're not a math person, so you stopped trying. Maybe you were told your accent sounds unprofessional, so you changed how you speak. Maybe you were told people like you don't belong in leadership, so you stayed quiet in meetings. These aren't just insecurities, they're implanted beliefs, placed there by systems that benefit when you doubt yourself. And here's the Machiavellian move. The moment you recognize the implantation, it loses power. Once you see that the voice in your head isn't yours, that it's an echo of someone else's agenda, you can choose to ignore it. You can choose to act as if you belong. And in Machiavellian terms, perception is reality. If you act like you have authority, people will treat you like you do. If you carry yourself like you're worthy, the world will agree. Not because it's true, but because confidence is a form of power, and power commands respect. Morrison's work was banned because it forces the question, who benefits from your self-hatred? And once you ask that question, you start looking for the architects, the people, the policies, the narratives that need you to stay small. That's dangerous. That's why they pull it from shelves, because self-awareness is the enemy of control. And the second you stop fighting yourself, you're free to fight them. So now you see two truths. Power is immoral, and the best prison is the one inside your head. But there's a third layer, one that's even more sinister. Because what if the prison isn't just internal? What if reality itself is being rewritten around you, and you don't even notice? What if the past, the present, the truth is whatever they say it is? That's not paranoia. That's the third forbidden concept. 2 + 2 = 5. That's the line, the one George Orwell wrote in 1984. The one that makes people uncomfortable. Because it's not about math, it's about submission. It's about the moment you accept a lie so obvious, so absurd, that accepting it proves you've surrendered completely. Machiavelli knew this too. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." Translation, people believe what they're shown, not what is true. And if you control what they see, if you control the narrative, the history, the language itself, you control reality. In 1984, the party doesn't just punish rebellion. It erases it. It rewrites history. It changes records. It makes yesterday's truth today's heresy. And under constant surveillance, under the gaze of Big Brother, people learn to self-censor. Not because they're afraid of punishment, but because they forget there was ever another way to think. This is the nightmare. Not chains, not violence. Forgetting. Machiavelli would admire the efficiency. Why use force when you can use narrative control? Why imprison rebels when you can make rebellion unthinkable? Why silence dissent when you can rewrite the past so dissent never existed? Because 1984 is a mirror. It shows what every authoritarian system dreams of. Total control, not just of actions, of thoughts. And the tools Orwell described, surveillance, propaganda, language manipulation, aren't science fiction anymore. They're here. Your phone tracks you, your searches are logged, your preferences, your habits, your thoughts are data, and that data is used to shape what you see, what you believe, what you think is real. Algorithms feed you content that confirms your biases. News outlets frame stories to guide your emotions. History is edited, sanitized, rewritten to serve the present. And just like in 1984, most people don't resist. They don't even notice. You think you're informed, you think you're free, but ask yourself, how much of what you believe came from independent investigation and how much came from sources that were fed to you? How often do you question the narrative? How often do you check if the truth you're being sold serves someone else's agenda? Machiavelli's lesson. He who controls the story controls the people. If you want power, you don't just take the throne, you take the narrative. You become the voice people trust. You frame events in your favor. You make your enemies look foolish, dangerous, or irrelevant. And over time, your version becomes the only version people remember. Orwell didn't just warn about government. He warned about surrender. He warned that the scariest part of authoritarianism isn't force. It's the moment you stop caring about truth. The moment you say, it doesn't matter. The moment you accept the lie because fighting it is exhausting. That's when they win. Not when they silence you, when you silence yourself. And recognizing that edge, that line between resistance and submission, is what makes this concept forbidden. Because once you see it, you can't ignore it. Once you see how truth is bent, you start bending it yourself. You start controlling your narrative. You stop letting others define you, and that's power. Raw, Machiavellian, uncontrollable. Truth is controlled, the self is imprisoned, power is immoral. But now we go deeper, because the systems we've discussed rely on one more assumption, that identity is fixed, that you are what society says you are, that the boxes they built for you are the only options. But what if that's a lie too? What if identity is fluid and the rigidity is just another form of control? That's the fourth forbidden concept, and it breaks everything. You are not what they named you. That's the crack in the armor, the vulnerability every rigid system tries to hide. Because if identity is fluid, if gender, sexuality, selfhood itself can shift, evolve, transcend the categories they gave you, then the entire hierarchy collapses. Machiavelli understood fluidity in power. He wrote that a prince must be a fox and a lion, not one or the other. Both, adaptable, strategic, willing to shift form depending on the threat. Because rigidity is weakness, flexibility is survival, and the same applies to identity. Categories are control mechanisms: man, woman, gay, straight, black, white. These aren't neutral descriptors, they're assignments. They tell you where you belong, what you're allowed to want, who you're allowed to become. And when someone says, "I don't fit in your box," the system panics, because that person just revealed the truth. The boxes were always arbitrary. In Genderqueer, Maia explores identity outside the binary. The book was banned faster than almost any other text in recent history, not because of obscenity, because it threatened the story society tells about gender, that it's fixed, biological, unchangeable. That story props up laws, it props up hierarchies, it props up the idea that some people are normal and others are deviant. And the moment you reject the binary, you reject the power structure built on top of it. Machiavelli would see this clearly. Control relies on predictability. If people are locked into rigid identities, their behavior is easy to predict, easy to manipulate, easy to contain. But if identity is fluid, if people can redefine themselves at will, then they become illegible to power, uncontrollable, dangerous. You've been told who you are. Maybe it was your parents, your religion, your culture. You were told what a man does, what a woman wants, what success looks like, what maturity means. And you probably tried to fit. You shaped yourself to meet the expectations. But here's the Machiavellian truth. The you they expect is the you they can control. The moment you step outside that mold, the moment you say, I'm not what you thought and I don't need your approval, you become powerful. Not because you're rebelling for rebellion's sake, but because you've stopped playing a rigged game. You've stopped letting others define the terms of your existence. Machiavelli advised the prince to appear conventional while acting freely. The same applies here. You don't need to announce your fluidity. You don't need permission. You simply act as the self you choose and let the world adjust. Fluidity threatens every institution that relies on fixed categories. Religion, government, markets, schools, they all need you to stay in your lane. Because if you don't, the entire system of rewards and punishments stops working. How do you sell products if people don't fit into men's and women's markets? How do you enforce laws if gender and sexuality aren't binary? How do you maintain tradition if identity is constantly evolving? You can't. So they ban the books. They frame fluidity as confusion, as mental illness, as moral decay. They try to scare you back into the box. But once you've tasted the freedom of self-definition, you don't go back. You adapt. You evolve. You become ungovernable. And that's the power they fear most. So you've learned to see through morality, to escape internal prisons, to recognize truth erosion, to reject fixed identity. But here's the question they don't want you to ask. What if the system itself is designed to keep you down? Not through cruelty, through structure, through invisible rules that look like fairness, but function as cages. That's the fifth forbidden concept, and it's the one that radicalized entire generations. The game is rigged, not sometimes, not by accident, by design. That's the truth they've hidden behind words like meritocracy and equal opportunity and the American dream. They told you anyone can make it, work hard, stay honest, climb the ladder. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that those at the top didn't get there by merit alone. They got there by inheritance, by alliance, by leveraging systems built to favor them. And they stay there by convincing everyone else that the system is fair. In The Hate You Give, Angie Thomas exposes the mechanics. A black teenager watches a friend get killed by police. She watches the media spin the story. She watches the system protect the officer. She watches her community get blamed for their own oppression. This isn't random. This is embedded inequity. The way laws, policies, narratives, and norms are structured to protect the powerful and punish the powerless, all while maintaining the illusion of justice. Machiavelli understood this from the ruler's perspective. He advised princes to make laws that appeared fair, but actually concentrated power, to create systems where the people felt heard, but had no real influence, to use institutions as shields so the prince never takes the blame. The system does. Because The Hate You Give doesn't just tell a story, it teaches a lesson. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. And once you see that, once you understand that inequality isn't a bug, it's a feature, you stop asking for reform. You start demanding revolution. That's dangerous. That's why it gets pulled from school libraries. That's why parents panic. Because the book doesn't teach kids to trust the system. It teaches them to see through it. You've been sold the myth of meritocracy. You were told your degree would lead to a good job. You were told working hard would lead to promotions. You were told playing by the rules would lead to success. But look around. Who's actually succeeding? The people who work the hardest, or the people with the right connections? The people with the best ideas, or the people who look the part? The people who follow the rules, or the people who know how to bend them? Machiavelli's answer: systems reward those who understand them, not those who obey them. The inequities are invisible until you start looking. Then you see them everywhere. The tax code that favors the wealthy, the hiring process that filters out unfamiliar names, the school funding tied to property taxes, ensuring poor kids stay poor, the criminal justice system that punishes the same behavior differently based on skin color. These aren't accidents. They're architecture. And the people at the top built it this way. Don't rage against the system. Map it. Understand how it works. See where the levers are. See who benefits. See where the cracks are. Because once you understand the machinery, you can exploit it. You can form alliances. You can bypass gatekeepers. You can build parallel structures. You can navigate the inequity without letting it crush you. This is the forbidden knowledge. The system is rigged, yes, but rigged systems can be gamed. And those who understand the game stop being victims. They become players. We've covered 5 forbidden concepts: amoral power, internalized oppression, truth erosion, fluid identity, embedded inequity. Each one strips away a layer of illusion. But the 6th concept is different. It's not about power structures. It's about you, about the part of you that craves the hidden, the forbidden, the dangerous. It's about the allure of knowledge that breaks the rules. And once you understand that allure, you'll understand why they banned books in the first place. You want what you're not allowed to have. That's human nature, not weakness. Design. Machiavelli knew it. He wrote that people desire what is forbidden more intensely than what is freely given. And systems exploit this. They tell you certain knowledge is too dangerous, certain books too corrupting, certain ideas too dark. And in doing so, they guarantee you'll seek them out. Not because of magic, because of curiosity, because the series teaches children that there are hidden worlds beyond the mundane, that ordinary people can access extraordinary power, that the authorities, the ministry, the schools, the adults are often wrong, corrupt, or cowardly. And that truth is found by questioning, not by obeying. This is the allure of the unseen realms, the promise that beyond the visible, there is more power, more truth, more possibility. Machiavelli harnessed this. He wrote The Prince not as a public manifesto, but as a private manual. It was meant to feel like forbidden knowledge, like something you shouldn't have. And that made it irresistible, because forbidden knowledge doesn't just inform, it empowers. It makes you feel like you've joined a secret circle, like you've seen behind the curtain, like you know something the sheep don't. You're drawn to the edges, to the ideas that aren't mainstream, to the books, podcasts, forums, videos that say, they don't want you to know this. Why? Because mainstream knowledge is safe, it's approved, it's controlled. But the edges, the forbidden, the controversial, the dangerous, promise leverage. They promise an advantage. Machiavelli would say, seek the knowledge others avoid, not because it's necessarily true, but because believing it gives you a different lens, a strategic advantage, a willingness to act where others hesitate. The allure of the unseen is powerful, but it's also a trap, because not all forbidden knowledge is valuable. Some of it is forbidden because it's harmful. Conspiracy theories, extremist ideologies, dangerous pseudoscience. These promise power, but they deliver delusion. They isolate you. They make you paranoid. They turn you into a tool for someone else's agenda. Machiavelli understood this balance. He sought hidden knowledge, yes, but he filtered it through pragmatism. He asked, does this idea give me power, or does it make me a fanatic? Does it sharpen my strategy, or does it cloud my judgment? Does it help me win, or does it just make me feel special? This concept isn't banned because it's wrong. It's banned because it's seductive. It teaches people to seek power outside traditional channels, to explore ideas that undermine authority, to stop trusting the gatekeepers. And once you do that, you become unpredictable. You stop consuming approved narratives. You start building your own worldview. You become sovereign. And that's the ultimate threat, not rebellion. Independence. 6 concepts down, 1 left. And this last one is the key. Because all the others, power, oppression, truth, identity, inequity, forbidden knowledge, they all converge in a single moment. The moment of defiance. The moment you stop accepting. The moment you stop obeying. The moment you decide to burn it all down. And that moment happens most powerfully in one phase of life, adolescence. This is the 7th forbidden concept, and it's the one they fear most. Adolescence is chaos, hormones, identity crises, rage. But it's also potential, raw, unfocused, dangerous. Because adolescence is the moment when a person first realizes the world is broken, that the adults lied, that the rules are arbitrary, that everything they were promised, fairness, meaning, reward, is conditional at best, absent at worst. And in that realization, there's a choice: submit or rebel. Because Holden Caulfield embodies that choice. He's angry, he's alienated. He sees through the phoniness of adult society. He refuses to play along. He doesn't fit. And rather than changing himself to fit, he rejects the entire system. This terrifies institutions, not because Holden is violent, but because he's disengaged. He doesn't care about success. He doesn't care about approval. He doesn't care about the future they're selling. And if an entire generation adopted that mindset, the system would collapse. Machiavelli understood the power of youthful defiance. He knew that empires rise and fall based on the energy of the young, that revolutions are fought by those who have nothing to lose, that the old guard, no matter how powerful, eventually falls to the fury of the next generation. You remember your own adolescence? The rage, the frustration, the feeling that everything was wrong and no one would listen. Some people suppressed it. They grew up. They learned to conform. They buried the storm. But others, they channeled it. They turned that raw, defiant energy into something useful. Artists, activists, entrepreneurs, outliers, people who refused to settle, who refused to accept the world as it was, who used their adolescent fury as fuel for the rest of their lives. Machiavelli's lesson: the storm is power, if you learn to ride it. Don't suppress the chaos. Don't apologize for the rage. Direct it. Channel it into creation, into conquest, into change. Because that energy, that refusal to accept, is what breaks systems. It's what topples kings. It's what builds empires. This concept is banned because it tells young people the truth. You're right to be angry. The world is broken. The adults did fail you. The system is rigged, and you have every right to tear it down. That message is dangerous, not because it's false, but because it's mobilizing. It turns passive victims into active agents. It turns despair into defiance. It turns alienation into revolution. And institutions built on compliance can't survive that. So they ban the catcher in the rye. They ban the hate you give. They ban anything that validates youthful rage. Because validated rage becomes organized rage. And organized rage becomes power. Adolescence doesn't end at 18. That storm, and that refusal to accept, is available to you right now. You can tap into it. You can ask, what am I tolerating that I shouldn't? What system am I propping up with my obedience? What part of me is still that angry teenager who saw through the lies? And you can let that part speak. Not recklessly, not destructively, but strategically. Machiavelli didn't rage blindly. He channeled his fury into analysis, into understanding, into a manual that would outlast empires. You can do the same. You can take your defiance and turn it into mastery, into art, into influence, into a life that refuses to bow. 7 forbidden concepts, 7 truths they tried to bury. But here's the secret they didn't anticipate. You don't need their permission to know. You don't need their approval to act. You don't need their blessing to become powerful. Machiavelli wrote The Prince for one person, Lorenzo de' Medici, but it wasn't Lorenzo who remembered the book. It was everyone else. The people who weren't supposed to read it. The people who took the forbidden knowledge and used it. These 7 concepts work the same way. They were banned to keep you powerless. But now you know. Now you see the machinery, the amoral nature of power, the prisons inside your mind, the erosion of truth, the fluidity of self, the embedded inequities, the allure of the forbidden, the storm of defiance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to obedience. You can't pretend the world is fair. You can only move forward, strategically, ruthlessly, sovereign. This is the transformation, not motivation, awakening. And if you made it to the end, you're already different. You're already dangerous. Welcome to the other side. Now go use it.